Wonder how the government brings in tyranny through acts of conspiracy? Take a look at this document here. This was the act that was passed back in April 11th, 2020. The bill is known as Bill C-14. This act is not the Emergencies Act that a lot of people have thought it to be. That was the mainstream media that led you on with that. This COVID-19 Measures Act that was put in by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is nothing more than an amendment to two other acts. And if you take a look down here in the summary, you will see Part 1 of the Act of Bill C-14 amends the Income Tax Act, and Part 2 is the Financial Administration Act. So the Emergencies Act was never passed, and that's what people need to understand. And the only thing that was passed was the amendments to allow Justin Trudeau and his government to give Canadians some funding like the CERB and EI and stuff like that. And it's not the Emergencies Act at all. If you take a look at the Emergencies Act, you'll see on the screen here that the problem that Mr. Trudeau is having is that the Charter on Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights are in the way. So he can't go and put all these closures and fines and heavy-handedness upon the Canadian people legally under the Emergencies Act. In fact, he should have used the Emergencies Act, because if you take a look here, it's under Part 1 called the Public Welfare Emergency. And if you take a look on B, it says disease in humans, animals, or plants. That's B right there. So what I'm trying to say is that this Emergencies Act is exactly what COVID-19 needed. But Trudeau decided not to do that because he needs to bring in a new world order. And he even said he likes the way the Chinese have a dictatorship because it's a better way of governing and doing business.
Even with Sun TV watching for any slip, he was asked which country he most admired and referred to China.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start, investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted.
Now that you've seen that, you can see why Justin Trudeau is not pushing the Emergencies Act, because the Charter on Rights and Freedoms are in the way. So he has to come up with a better idea to control the Canadian people, to use the police to beat up the Canadian people, to have crazy fines of $100,000, which I think the Emergencies Act only allows $500. Yeah, so you can see it's way outside here. But what people have to realize by switching into these tables here is you'll see what this Bill C-14 has allowed to happen. There it is. There, it's called the COVID-19 Emergency Response Act. See, that's why you think it's the Emergencies Act. No, it's not the Emergencies Act. It's called the Emergencies Response Act, which is C14. But if you can see here, Part 1 is the income tax part. Part 2 is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit Act. Part 3 is the Public Health Events and National Concerns Payment Act. Part 4 is the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation Act. Part 5 is the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Act. And Part 6 is the Export Development Act. I'm just going to open up the other side of the table contents on this bill that's just come out. A little bit of deception going on, so I just thought I'd help people out here to make them understand that the Emergency Act was never passed. Part 7, Federal Provincial Fiscal Arrangements Act, financial. So you're kind of getting it. It's all about money and helping out everybody. So you can see it here on the screen. I don't need to read them all here. So this was just to give economic relief, all right? And now you're seeing that we have all these closures. The Premier Ford here in Ontario is threatening Canadians with a $10,000 fine. If you have a barbecue and you have too many people in your backyard, he's going to bring in bylaw and police and arrest you and fine you. Well, what people need to understand is that it's the anti-terrorist laws that are being used on you, Bill C-36, and also Bill C-51. So I'm just going to go into Bill C-36 here, and I think I read this in my last video, but you can see how this can be applied against you. Now I know that you're going to say, well, I'm not a terrorist. Well, that's irrelevant, because the beautiful thing about the anti-terrorist laws is it's all done in secret. The courts don't acknowledge that it's being used on you. The judges just pretend that, you know, the Emergencies Act is in and you're being fined because you need to follow Premier Ford's rules. See? Not laws. There is no law. It's just rules that these dictators and government have given us right now. Now, you're going to say, well, where is this all coming from? Okay. Well, take a look on the page here. You'll see summary. We'll just go down here to summary, but maybe we'll read the recommendation. Okay. Her Excellency, the Governor General recommends to the House of Commons the appropriation of public revenue under the circumstances in the manner and for the purposes set out in a measure entitled An Act to Amend the Criminal Code. So that's where they're going to get you. And the Official Secrets Act, the Canada Evidence Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act, and other acts. See, they don't even name all the acts. So divorce acts in there too, I can prove that. And to enact measures respecting the registration of charities in order to combat terrorism. So what I'm saying is, if you go downtown and some of these people think that they have the right to protest, no you don't. And the reason why is the Canadian government's going to make you a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, and use Bill C-36 on you. Part 1 amends the criminal code. Just going down here into a summary. Amends the criminal code to implement international conventions related to terrorism, to create offenses related to terrorism. So you're a terrorist now, and even though you haven't done a crime and you're not a terrorist, the police will create the offense against you. Like if you don't take the fine, they say that you assaulted them and now you're under arrest and you're going to jail. It's that simple. And they can detain you without charge. So you don't get a Form 10. They just put you in jail. They'll still fingerprint you and take your pictures and all that stuff. They'll go through the motions, including the financing of terrorism and the participation, facilitation, and carrying out terrorist activities, and to provide means by which property belonging to terrorist groups and property linked to terrorist activities can be seized, restrained, and fortified. It also provides for the deletion of hate propaganda from public websites. So if you take a look at Press for Truth, Dan Dix, and other people across the spectrum on YouTube, you can see they've been demonetized, and then some of them were taken right off. Why? Because the government has declared them a terrorist spreading hate speech. We all know these guys aren't doing that. They're just trying to report the news and criticize government. But the government can go ahead and classify them as hate speech and as terrorists. And how they do that, if you take a look at Part 2, amends the Official Secrets Act. So when they lie about you, it's protected under the Official Secrets Act. So they don't have to prove anything. They just say it, and it's protected under the Official Secrets Act, which becomes the Security of Information Act. That's why if you try to get a freedom of information, try to get a police report, you'll be turned down. It's that simple. You just won't get it. You won't even get your 911 call. So let's just say a bunch of provocateurs and cops came to your house and smashed your window, and you wanted to get you called the police, and the police showed up and scribbled some stuff down on a piece of paper and did their notes. You won't get those police notes. And then when you ask the cops, they'll say no. And then when you go to Freedom of Information, they'll also say no. So don't be surprised if you get turned down. If something weird happens, you'll just not get the information. You're going to have to gather it all yourself, like video evidence, and catch them that way. But trying to get paper out of the cops and the government and the courts, forget it. It's not happening. I can say right now, there's a court case about me being convicted as a criminal, which I'm not, and I can't have disclosure. I don't have the case. There's like thousands of pages in a court case, but I have one piece of paper. And it's because I ran in a municipal election on an anti-corruption platform in the city of Kawartha Lakes, Ontario. And I just found out that Kevin J. Johnson, a man who's a complete stranger to me, ran for mayor in Mississauga, and he was critical of the government there. And he also went to jail as well, and he has one piece of paper. Now, the problem with that in Canada and criminal case law is that if they have a case against you, all the paperwork belongs to you as property. And where you can find that is called Stitchcom 1991. It's a Supreme Court ruling back in 1991 where the Crown was hiding information on an individual to get a conviction. And then when the evidence came out later, or a year or two or whenever it was, found out the guy was innocent. So by burying the information, they can convict anybody. That's why in Canada, if you're going to have proper justice, you must give full disclosure, show the facts, show the evidence, videos, what you did, prove it in the court of law. Well, not anymore. So just be aware of that, because a lot of people think they're going to go downtown now and start not listening to Premier Ford's rules or Justin Trudeau's rules, and you're going to wonder what's going to happen. So you're going to wonder what's going to happen to you. And I'll just tell you quite quickly here. It's the second part of the anti-terrorist laws that came out in 2015. If you take a look at the document here, you'll see it's been revised. I sent it to you in December 13th, 2018. But just to go over it very quickly here, the anti-terrorist laws are bad enough. But this one here, this is where you people think you have your constitutional rights. Wrong. Summary. The enactment amends the criminal code to amend, remove, or repeal passages and provisions that may have been ruled unconstitutional, there you go, or that raise risks with regard to the Canadian Charter and rights and freedoms. That's the key right there, so you don't have any rights, as well as passages and provisions that are obsolete, redundant, or that no longer have any place in criminal law. Yeah, like your rights. It also modifies certain provisions of the code relating to sexual assault in order to clarify their application, and that's what it is. It's called an application, a private application by the Attorney General when they do this to you, and to provide a procedure applicable to the admissibility and the use of the complainant's record, that's the cops and government, when in the possession of the accused. The enactment also amends the Department of Justice Act, that's the DOJ, they don't have to follow the rules like federal court rules, to require that the Minister of Justice cause to be tabled for every government bill introduced in either House of Parliament, a statement of the bill's potential effects on the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Charter, the Canadian Charter on Rights and Freedoms. Finally, this is key. It makes consequential amendments to the Criminal Records Act. That's right. So you're not anywhere in case law.